Not far from Jumonville today. I was going to go to Jumonville Grove and show you all something, but I found out that I couldn't. It was closed. The history of it being that very young 20-year-old George Washington happened to be there, and he came upon a bunch of French soldiers. Here's the Braddock Road trace. If you're all interested in that. This highway is very busy. I'll show you. This is the first road to the west. So what happened was, there's Braddock and his men. I'm about to go up to his grave. Came from Winchester, near where my sister is at. And you see where the infantries of different regiments came through. And they built this road. It was the first road. So you had I'm going to sit here for a minute. You had a very young George Washington. He had seen no battles. He decided that he was going to have a commission, to come here through Dinwiddie. And he had gone to Fort Pitt before that. So you have to understand one thing too, is that his cousin Gist had a town not far from here. So the Indians were aligned with, Lieutenant Harrison was aligned with the French originally, and then saw a better deal with the British. Lieutenant Harrison was aligned with himself. So anyhow, what basically happened was Washington comes upon these these French soldiers, and he takes them as being a threat, and he kills them, and he accidentally signs the paper that he murdered them. So that was the spot where the French and Indian War started. I didn't get to show you that, but this is the road that afterwards Braddock was going to go to Fort Pitt, at that time was Fort Duquesne, and he was going to go and take it back. So he had a lot of troops with him, and he came here and he was defeated. It was a horrible defeat. I was reading of some of the nobles. All these guys were from England who came here, Braddock especially. Take a little look at this. So Braddock is killed, and it says here a secret grave. I'll show you that. Braddock is killed by underestimating his enemy, and the sash that he's wearing is given to Washington. Actually, the sash is made of a silk, and it was made that it would carry his body. So they carried his body, and he gave Washington one of his pistols. It says here about him: Major General Edward Braddock, commander of the Chief of British Forces North America, traveled over this road traced below on June 25th, 1755, marching west with his 2,400-man army. The 60-year-old Braddock was under orders to capture Fort Duquesne and force the French from the upper Ohio Valley. However, a disastrous stroke a few miles from Fort Duquesne on July 9th. There they collided with about 200 French and 600 Indians. Disorganization and fear seized the British as they suffered about 900 casualties, more than half killed. Out of the 1,400 engaged, Braddock himself was mortally wounded. July 13th, the British camped here, and Braddock died that night. He was buried under the road, an unmarked grave to keep it from being disturbed by Indians. In 1804, workmen repairing the section of Braddock Road discovered what is believed to be the original gravesite just downhill to the left. His remains were then interred on this hill, and a granite monument was added. So, I'm going to go here and I'm going to see Braddock's grave. Man, born in the 1600s, British, never been here before. This monument is erected to dedicate the memory of, and this is where he's buried, Major General Edward Braddock. This side gives a list of the names of the association, if you're curious. Says the same thing. Memory of Major General Edward Braddock and his officers of his regiment, the Coldstream Guards of England, October 15th. Here lieth the remains of General Edward Braddock, who, in command of the 44th, 48th Regiments of England Regulars, was mortally wounded in an engagement with the French and Indians under the command of Captain de Montbrison in the Battle of Monongahela, within 10 miles of Fort Duquesne, now Pittsburgh, July 9th, 1755. He was borne back with the retreating army to the Old Orchard camp about 1/4 of a mile west of this park, where he died July 13th, 1755. Lieutenant Colonel George Washington read his burial service at the gravesite. General Braddock and his men were coming down this road, and you can imagine just how narrow it was. We would have had more old growth trees around here, different things of that such nature. And he was attacked because he was used to fighting in lines in the way they did in England at the time, in Britain. In 1755, a very different place around here. You can imagine it. This right here is the very spot where Washington buried Braddock, and he had the entire army walk over it so that nobody could find it, nobody could disturb the grave, nobody could do anything. And Washington read his eulogy right here, right on this very spot. So if I would go back in time to 1755, I'd be surrounded by all these British soldiers, and George Washington standing right here next to me, giving one heck of a good eulogy. And for the better part of at least 150 years, this grave was unknown, until they started repairing the road, and then they found it. Pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. Because of his defeat here, Forbes built Fort Ligonier and all those forts. He had a different idea. So we're not going to do this. We're not going to have these kind of losses. We're going to build a fort every day's journey, and we're going to have it. If we have a problem, we can fall back. We're going to show our dominance across where we're going. That's pretty cool. This doctor would have had. Some rifles at the time. This will make you dizzy. halls of great men. Two of my heroes right there.
And ask for better service, straight from the owner's hands.
You know the saying, water the horses and brandy the gentleman.
A gentleman? Next thing, he'll be getting his own bed for the night.
You could each have your own bed, you just have to share it with 2 or 3 others.
End of the day, she's still full of energy. All I care is that you don't bump me up with songs and kicks. Last night at the ferry, I thought I was sleeping next to a mule with one color packs at the law. Could have been better. Everybody's reflection for days.
The only bed bugs you bring in the night terror, you better take with you when you leave.
I thought about sleeping on the floor.
So General Forbes is dead, and George Washington, Lieutenant Harrison, a lot of his troops, fucking being followed, and the South Carolinians were here. They're building the road, the Braddock Road, and Washington wants to build a fort in the great fields, or whatever they called it, the fields. And the Indians were like, Lieutenant Harrison, he dies about a year after that, half chief, half king, whatever you wanted to call him. He was a Mingo, which was a band. He had his own reasons for wanting to get the British and the French to fight. He knew it was possible that he could get more alliances within his waning power in the tribal systems around here. There were the Delaware, there were the Iroquois, he was Mingo. So Washington comes and built this fort, and he says, nope, not doing it with you. I am not coming here. So in May of 1754, Lieutenant Colonel Washington, now in charge of everything, because Braddock's gone, and he's a provincial. He's with the DeWitty's guidance to be here, but the South Carolinians are with the King's troops. So they're like, you know what? If you want us to build a road, you can go and pay them yourself, because we're not doing it. And you can see here where Gist Plantation was, the Great Meadows, and you think about where Gist, which is Washington's cousin, had his place attacked. Whittingham, Washington makes what was either unlucky or a mistake and builds this fort here. And the French, in retaliation for Jamel's death, they want to capture Washington. And they have a skirmish here, and a siege of it. Now, what Washington's thinking is not that this is going to support his troops. He's looking at the creek beds. He's saying to himself, I have a natural defense right here. You see that? Like, if you're being attacked and you go in those creek beds, you're pretty good to go. But this here was meant to store the supplies. But it is a small little fort. Fort Necessity, they called it. You have some look at it. That's where the tree line was. The British defenses, the earthworks. You can see where they were in a stream. The French attack from. That was the tree line in 1754. Over here you're going to see some pictographs. So Washington surrenders, and he surrenders right here. And what happens is he doesn't interpret the, he can't read French. So he has one good translator, and he has another one. The good one he has is Hurt. The other one speaks Dutch. So he's translating from English to Dutch to French. And he miscues what the one word meant. And instead of Washington saying that the gentleman, Jamande, was killed, he said he murdered him. And it started a skirmish that became the French and Indian War. I misspoke about Braddock. That happened, this was before Braddock. This was actually earlier that spring. See the original earthworks? We're going to stay off them. We're not going to bother them. It's very historic. These earthworks are from the 1750s. This is Fort Necessity. I kind of have it all to myself today. Nobody out here. It's just me. This is, of course, not the original. You can inside of Fort Necessity here. Give you an idea of the stockade. Or just a little building, you know. It's a building that they built to store and protect what they had. Imagine defending this from an attack. Imagine that. You wonder how many men were killed. How many men were killed just by the bullets hitting the wood and it splintering? Just like on a ship with cannon fire. So this, my friends, is Fort Necessity. I'm going to do more in the future. A lot of this isn't open yet. It's still getting out of winter time, but I wanted to give you guys a feel for it in the winter. A feel for it about the time of year when Washington was here. It would be about a month from now. But still, it's not much different. It's been warmer this year. But those winters were a lot colder then. Get a feel for this being the wilderness right here. This is the only outpost you have. You're being attacked. You want to take Fort Duquesne because the French are trying to take over that section of North America. It's a big claim between the North American continent, between the French, the British, and the Native Americans that are basically like, you know, why you guys want our land? I am descended from all three groups of those people. So for me, this is kind of interesting. I can look inside. Not much there.